everyone! Welcome to another First Impressions. I'm actually getting through the palettes that I right now have to do first impressions for, mostly because I haven't been buying anything because I've been a little bit out of the loop, which is good because I haven't been buying as much makeup. I have been spending money on other things, but I desperately want to use this palette. I'm so excited to have it, and you guys know how much I love Blend Bunny, the Blend Bunny Sugar and Grunge palette. I was thrilled when they released this. They've released, I think, 2 palettes since this. The more like neutral one that's supposed to be multi-purpose, I can't remember what the name of that is, as well as the most recent like pastel palette. I imagine I will probably end up buying both at some point, but really you can only buy so many things. Anyway, and so I bought this I think like pretty soon after it launched, and since time has passed. However, I imagine, and I always say this, we all are in the same boat, or at least most of us are in the same boat. Most people can't afford to buy all the releases as soon as they launch all the time. So this, I'm sure, is still going to be relevant to some people. If you wanted to hear my thoughts on it, hear me use it, see swatches, all that stuff. Honestly, I just want to appreciate another palette from Blend Bunny. I love the packaging of this. I think it is so cute, and I love the color story. I love the like 90s grunge theme, and I kind of like how they arrange the shimmers. Some people had very strong opinions on that. It really doesn't matter to me. I appreciate that the owner of Blend Bunny was like, honestly, I was just like, wanted to switch it up a little bit, give people some inspo, but there are still corresponding shimmers to every column. So if you want to do completely monochromatic look, you can do a completely monochromatic look. I think today I want to do a two-toned eye with this teal row and this pink row. I don't know, the combo is kind of calling to me. We're going to start out with arm swatches. Actually, first I'm going to do up-close shots of the palette before I touch it, and then we'll get into arm swatches. So I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I'm going to... Oh yeah, it's fine. I can pull my sleeve up enough. Let's zoom in maybe a little bit more. Do some live swatches. I haven't done live swatches of a palette in so long. So excited for this. So starting with the first row, I always swatch in rows because that's how I like to do it, and everyone always swatches Blend Bunny palettes in columns anyway, so I'm just trying to be different. Okay, first shade is called Skater Girl. Love it. Skater Girl with an A. It's like a pastel rose. Then we have Sweetheart, which is a matte beige. We all know how I feel about matte beiges. Then Candy is a pastel teal. And maybe at the very end of the video, I'll do some comparisons between the Blend Bunny palettes that I have right now. And then Baby T is a pastel kind of like lilac shade. Payphone is a gray, a very light matte gray. And then Ironic is a pastel, kind of like pastel lime. I really like this shade. All very pigmented, very springy, this little row, which I honestly feel like did this palette come out in spring? The beginning of summer, honestly, I don't even remember. A lot has happened. Then we have the shade Flannel, starting the second row, which is a warm toned, like rosy shade, a matte, complicated. I'm singing so many songs in my mind, even though that came out in the early 2000s by Avril Lavigne, I think. Anyway, it's a neutral mid-tone brown. Baggy Jeans is a mid-toned matte teal. This one feels slightly less pigmented, but that's just based on swatches. Then we have Detention, which is a mid-toned lavender. That's super pretty. Mixtape is a mid-toned matte gray. I'm really excited for this gray row, honestly. 1995 is a kind of like mid-toned matte mossy green, which also was swatching a little bit light. I don't have anything on my arm though, and I didn't moisturize today, so it doesn't have a ton of stuff to stick to. Starting off with the fourth row, we have the shade Drew, which is a deeper kind of like cranberry color. I feel like I can never have enough of these in my collection. Runaway is a dark neutral brown. Matte. Teen Spirit is a dark matte teal. Love. Moody is a dark matte purple. Combat Boots is a dark gray, or is this a black? It's like a really dark gray that honestly kind of looks like a black, but I don't think it's a full like black. And then Garage Band is a dark matte mossy green. Love this color story. Look at all these shades. Oh, I love it so much. Then the last row is the row of shimmers. Let me make sure I'm in frame. Okay, so first we have the shade Grunge, which is a metallic black, but it has like a teal kind of flip to it, like a teal sparkle. That's really beautiful. Honestly, so much more interesting of a shade than I thought before I swatched it. Jawbreaker is a sparkly purple with kind of like blue shimmer to it. Don't Speak is a metallic cranberry. Not as sparkly, it seems, as the rest, which I think is typical for red shimmers or like pinky red shimmers. Butterfly, this feels really creamy, like one of the more creamy of Blend Bunny's shimmer formulas. It's like a metallic teal, super pretty, with like silver sparkle to it. Prom Queen is a really beautiful peachy shade, like peachy, super sparkly shade. And then Bubblegum is a light, icy, light pink with like silver sparkle, light icy pink shimmer. And all of these shimmers look really beautiful, sparkly. I mean, they just seem to keep improving with every palette in terms of their shimmer formula, and I love to see it so much. So this is the palette, swatched out, the color story. Ah yes, so beautiful. You can see, I mean, so beautiful in terms of how I'm showing it to you. You can see, you can tell I haven't filmed in a while. Wow, I've missed swatching eyeshadows. So excited to use this palette and use Blend Bunny, new Blend Bunny shadows. So exciting, truly. Okay, so as I typically do in my first impressions, I'm going to do some up-close swatches and eye swatches of the palette, and then I will do a little look of first impression. I will do timestamps, as always, so if you want to jump around to any one specific thing, feel free. And let's get into it. Okay, hello. I'm doing this a bit differently. I'm doing a voiceover. So I start by priming my eyes using the Fenty Beauty eyeshadow primer. The first shade in the palette is the shade Skater Girl. This is a warm toned rosy pastel shade. It's obviously a matte, as are pretty much all of the shades in this palette. It performs very well. It's great. No complaints. You'll have to bear with me with this voiceover. I'm trying something new, and instead of talking through it, I think this will just save time in the end. The next shade up is the shade Sweetheart, which is a matte beige. You know my feelings about a matte beige. Not my favorite shade, but as matte beiges go, it works pretty good. The next shade up is the shade Candy. Honestly, I am obsessed with this shade. I love it so much. It's really opaque. It's like a light teal, but it's really, really bright. It almost has like a touch more blue to it than traditional teals, but for being such a light colored matte teal, it's super opaque and super, super bright and vibrant. Next up we have the shade Baby Tea. This is a pastel lavender, also really, really beautiful. No complaints. Then we have the shade Payphone, which is a really light gray. It's a pretty neutral gray. I feel like it's not super blue toned, as some grays can be. Honestly, kind of like an off-white gray, but again, quality-wise, no complaints. It's really opaque. And the last shade in the top row is the shade Ironic, which is a really light pastel green. I also really, really like this shade, especially built up. I think it's really unique and really opaque. Then we have the shade Flannel starting off the second row, which is a like raspberry shade. No complaints. Honestly, pretty much as with all of the Blend Money palettes, most of the mattes in this palette are really, really beautiful. And then we have the shade Complicated, which is a very neutral mid-tone brown. Um, there's not a lot to say about it. It performs really well. But yeah, that's it. Then we have the shade Baggy Jeans, which is basically a slightly deeper version of the shade Candy. It's like a mid-tone teal, but I feel like it's a teal, again, that has like a bit more blue to it. I really, really like all of the teals in this palette. Honestly, I think it is very vibrant, and super opaque. Then we have the shade Detention, which is a, again, mid-toned, like, lavender shade. This is also really, really vibrant. This is one of my favorites in the palette. It was super opaque and really has like a bright quality to it that I feel like is kind of unique. Then we have the shade Mixtape, which is a mid-toned gray. Again, same with the shade Payphone. Very neutral in terms of gray. It's not like on the bluer side as some grays can be. It's not the most exciting shade to me, but in terms of performance, it's really nice. And then we have the shade 1995. This is probably the one shade in the palette that I feel like isn't quite the same. It's a little bit on the sheer side, which you can see in the swatches, and I definitely had to build it up more than I had to build up the other mattes in this palette. You can get it there for sure. You can get it to be opaque, and it's not overly patchy. It's just a slight bit more on the sheer side. Then we have the shade Drew to start off the third row. This is just, again, a slightly deeper kind of raspberry shade. Really, really beautiful. I love shades like this. They're some of my favorite, and it performs like most Blend Money mattes. Really opaque, easy to build, really nice. Then we have the shade Runaway, which is a really, really deep neutral brown. It's not quite black. It looks black, I think, just because it is so dark, but you can definitely tell it's a really, really dark brown. And performance-wise, it's really, really nice. Then we have the shade Teen Spirit, which is the deepest of the teals in this palette. I feel like in other Blend Bunny palettes, you'll have a lot of shades that are similar to this, but it is still a really nice teal. Then we have the shade Moody, which is a really deep, cool toned purple. This also took a little bit of building, maybe more than others, but I think that's pretty common with purples, especially really deep purples. There's no really issue in terms of performance. Like, you can get it to be really opaque and beautiful. It just takes slightly more to build it up fully. Then we have the shade Combat Boots. This, I think I've determined that it is a black but has like a slight charcoal quality to it. I don't know if that's just because it's in the column with the grays that I think it has a slight charcoalness, but I think it's not like a fully, like, there's something that's almost like slightly softer about it. But it builds up really, really beautifully as well. Then we have the shade Garage Band, which is just a really, really deep forest green. Again, no complaints. Maybe slightly takes a little bit more to build it up. Same with the shade 1995, but again, you can get it there, no problem. And once it's built up, there's no patchiness, and it's really opaque and nice. Then starting with the row of shimmers, this is the first shade, the shade Grunge. This is me going in with it dry. This is a really, really blackened teal. It's super smooth, super sparkly, and very unique. I really, really love this shade a lot. Then I am going in with a damp brush here. This is just with water, just to show you how it builds, and then with my finger. Next up is the shade Jawbreaker, which is an icy lilac. I really like how it has so many like silver sparkles in it. I think it goes really nicely with the theme of the palette. Um, It's really beautiful. Slightly more sheer compared to grungy, for example. It takes a little bit more building if you want to get it like super, super opaque, but part of me is like, that's not really the vibe of the shadow anyway, but you can definitely get it there. It just takes a little bit of building. And now I'm going to wet my brush and build it up that way as well. And then using my finger. Then we have the shade Don't Speak. This is slightly more opaque, slightly less shimmery than the other shades in the palette, which I think, again, is typical of red shimmers with red pigments. It's still really opaque, though. It's really nice. On the eye, it looks slightly warmer than I think it looks in the pan. And again, it's like a raspberry shimmer with like silver sparkle on top. Now I'm wetting my brush. And I think wetting the brush makes the shimmer a little bit more apparent, and then my finger. Then Butterfly is next up. This is like one of the creamier shades in the palette. It feels almost wet to the touch. Really thick and opaque, and also really sparkly as well. And in my experience, it's not uncommon for Blend Bunny shimmers to feel really different, shade by shade. Now I'm going to wet my brush. And use my finger. This also has a ton of silver shine to it. Then the shade Prom Queen is a peachy shimmer, again with like silver sparkle. I feel like all of these have a silver sparkle to them. Very light, almost like blends in with my skin tone. Now I'm going to wet my brush. And use my finger. And then the last shade in the palette is the shade Bubblegum. This is a really icy light pink. Similar to Jawbreaker in a way, it's slightly more piecey, slightly more sheer, and takes a little bit of building up, but you can definitely get it to be opaque. Now I'm wetting my brush. And using my finger. And that is all. Okie dokie. So I'm going to do a rounded eye today, which is why I have my full base done. And like I said in the intro, I'm going to use, I think, this teal row, like a two-toned eye situation, this teal row with this rosy row, which I've never really paired those two together before, but I really like the combo. So that's what I'm gonna do. I can't remember. I think I'm gonna start with I would normally start with a black, but I'm not going to start with a black today. I'm going instead, which I can't fully decide whether this is a black or a really dark gray, but I'm gonna start with the shade Combat Boots, which I'm going to use in lieu of a black. Oops, I just dipped into the wrong shade, which I'm sure it will work essentially the same way. For reference, also, I've primed my eyes with the Fenty Beauty eyeshadow primer, and I have not set my lids. I have a little bit of concealer on them, but I didn't put it all over my lids. So I'm just going to take Combat Boots and basically stamp this in my outer corner and a little bit into my crease in a C shape. Is this a black? Is this a dark gray? Honestly, for all intents and purposes, it's basically a black. And I'm 100% of the time pro black in palettes. Absolutely 100% of the time. Then I'm also going to put this on the outer part of my lower lash line as well. Okay, and then I'm going to take the shade Teen Speak. Spirit. I'm going to start, my right eye is going to be the teal eye, so I'm going to take the shade Teen Spirit, which is the darkest teal shade, and use this. I'm going to just go directly over the top of the shade Combat Boots, and then also blend this. Blend it out with this and blend this through like the front part of my crease as well. The Combat Boot shade worked exactly like I would expect any dark blend bunny matte to work, aka flawlessly. Okay, and now I'm going to take the shade Drew. If I'm not in the middle of the camera, I apologize. My setup is all fucked up right now because I don't know if I've mentioned this, haven't been filming in a while. Anyway, basically I'm going to do the exact same thing. I also took that Teen Spirit shade under my eye as well, as you can see. Same exact thing, take it directly over the shade Combat Boots and then blend it through my crease and use it to blend the Combat Boot shade out slightly as well. Not too much because I don't want black to be up to my brow. Okay, now I'm going to take the shade Baggy Jeans and use this to blend out my teal eye. So blending out the shade Teen Spirit along the edges. And then I'm going to take Flannel and do the same thing on my other eye. I really like this combination of colors actually. And then I'm just going to go back and forth on both eyes and just kind of go back into a little bit of Teen Spirit and Drew and just blend the mid-tone and the deep shades together a little bit more. And then I'm going to take the shade Candy, shocking, I know, you never saw it coming, and blend out the edges of my teal eye. And then just wipe off that same brush, which is risky business, but it'll be fine. And take the shade Skater Girl and do the same thing, just blending out the edges of this eye. Okay, so for my lid, for both eyes I'm going to start with the shade Grungy on the outer part, and then for my teal eye I'm going to take the shade Butterfly. So first I'm going to use some NYX glitter primer and just put this all over my lid. And then starting with Grungy, putting this, ooh, see, look at that shade, that's so pretty. I thought it was just like a straight black metallic, but it's really not. There's a lot of teal in here. So putting that on like the outer kind of third, I guess, or middle rather, not outer third, middle. And then taking Butterfly, I'm going to put that in the front part of my lid. And then I think what I'm going to do for my other eye is take Grungy again with a mixture of Don't Speak and Bubblegum, because I almost want to say that Bubblegum is going to be a little bit too light in comparison to Butterfly, just a touch. So I think if I mix the two, it's going to be a little bit better. Okay, so again, starting off with Grungy, which is going to look interesting, I think, on this eye because it's pink, but I still think it could look good. I'm kind of obsessed with this color, honestly. And then taking a mixture of Don't Speak and Bubblegum. Yeah, that was definitely the way. Okay, then I'm going to just go back in and blend a little bit the edges and outer corner and stuff, which won't be that interesting. Okay, so I just blended a little bit and I'm going to take Grungy and Butterfly. Look at those shades on my fingers. And Intensify on my lid. And then take Grungy and a mix of Bubblegum and Don't Speak. And do the same thing. And I might take the shade Bubblegum on my inner corners and my brow bone. I was going to reach for something else from like, I don't know, my highlighter or something, a different shadow, but I think I want to just really try my best to use this palette fully. I'm going to wet that just so it sticks a little bit better. Okay, I also put that bubblegum shit in my brow bone, but then my camera cut off. So I just did my brows. I blended a little bit lower on my lower lash line. Now I'm going to hop off camera, finish up the rest of my face, which is basically just put my lashes on my lips, and I will be right back to show you the finished look and give my thoughts on this palette. Okay, and this is the finished look. I love it. I love it so much. On my lips, before I forget to tell you, Makeup Forever Endless Cacao, of course. The Maybelline Powder Matte Lipstick in Carnival Brown, because I wanted to go with a grungy brown, although I feel like 90s lips is like brown, but like almost a warm brown. When you look back on it, I feel like in my mind it's super neutral and or cool toned, but in actuality it's kind of like a deeper to mid-toned, like neutral, almost like warm-ish chocolatey brown, but I just wanted to do cool toned because I always want to do cool tone lips. And I also have a little bit of the Danessa Myricks Color Fix Nudes in the shade Nude 3 just in the center of my lips. Honestly, I've kind of started doing this almost 100% of the time if I'm not using a gloss, because it just lightens everything up just slightly in the center of my lips without being a concealer. So I don't know, I'm just obsessed with it. My new favorite product, honestly. And my experience first time using the Sugar and Grunge palette, you'll be not surprised to know that I loved everything about using this. Truly, I love the way this look came out, and nothing is different in any negative way about these shadows. All the mattes that I used, flawless. All the shimmers that I used are super beautiful, very on par with Blend Money's like quote-unquote good shimmer formula, like sparkly, not indie sparkly, but really still honestly stands on their own as like really beautiful eyeshadows. If I was like, when I use these by themselves, these kind of like newer iterations of Blend Bunny's shimmer formula, I don't really always feel the need to go over them with like some type of toppery shade, whereas with generally typical metallics that honestly aren't like indie special shades, like metallics and palettes and whatever, if I'm just doing my makeup like just to do it, or just for like day-to-day kind of thing where I use just like a regular schmegular metallic, I will generally go over it with some type of indie topper special sparkly shade, and I really don't always feel the need to do that with Blend Bunny's formula. More specifically in their like Lure All Done Up, and this palette, even though it's new, like the newer shimmers I think are really, really, really beautiful. Blends beautifully, pigmented, just delicious. Of course, if you haven't watched me before, I love Blend Bunny's formula. It's really 10 out of 10 for me. And I love the color story. So I think if you're interested in the color story, you will like this. And yeah, that's all I have to say. I forgot to do shade comparison, so maybe I'll film that separately and insert it now because I have stuff I have to do tonight. I have to go buy tampons, so I really gotta get going. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm so happy to be back and filming again. Truly, it fills my soul with so much joy, and I can't wait to actually edit these, because filming is one thing, editing and uploading is an entirely separate endeavor. All this is to say, thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it this far, it really, really means a lot to me, and I would love to see you guys in my next video. Bye.